"They are painting me as a monster," Chad Daybell wrote in a trembling hand from his death row cell. But the truth is hidden in plain sight. "One day, the world will know I was never the killer they claim me to be." Those chilling words, smuggled from prison in the summer of 2025, arrived in the mailbox of an Idaho journalist covering one of the most infamous cases in America. It wasn't the first time Daybell had reached beyond the prison walls. But this time, his message came with a promise, secrets that would change everything. For a man convicted of orchestrating the deaths of his wife, his lover's husband, and his lover's own children, it was a letter that struck like a thunderclap. To understand the impact of those words, you have to revisit the tangled, nightmarish world Chad Daybell created. Daybell wasn't a household name before tragedy and obsession thrust him into the spotlight. Once, he was just a quiet, middle-aged man from Utah, the self-published author of apocalyptic novels. His books told stories of end-times prophecies, angels, and visions of destruction. They never sold more than a few hundred copies, but to a certain audience, Chad seemed more than an author, he was a prophet. That audience included Vallow, a charismatic mother, who was already deeply immersed in fringe religious beliefs. The two met at a conference in 2018, and what began as an encounter between like-minded spiritual warriors soon spiraled into something far darker. By 2019, people close to them began to die. Laurie's estranged husband, Charles Vallow, was shot and killed by her brother. Chad's wife, Tammy, was found dead in her bed, officially attributed to natural causes at first, but later revealed to be murder. Most horrifying of all were the disappearances of Laurie's two children, Tylee Ryan, 16, and JJ Vallow, 7. For months, investigators searched, while Chad and Laurie projected calm. Then, in June 2020, police dug up Chad's backyard in Rexburg, Idaho. What they found shocked the nation: the remains of both children, buried just feet from where Chad wrote his prophecies. By 2023, both Chad and Laurie had been convicted, Laurie receiving multiple life sentences, and Chad sentenced to death. But Daybell wasn't finished speaking. In the quiet monotony of his cell, he began writing letters, sometimes to supporters, sometimes to journalists, sometimes to complete strangers. These weren't ordinary prison letters. They were carefully crafted manifestos, written in the same eerie tone as his novels. He spoke of dark forces, of being a chosen messenger of God, of lies woven by the state. He painted himself as a scapegoat, a man punished not for murder, but for knowledge too dangerous to exist in the open. The most recent batch of letters, however, contained something new. Daybell hinted at others still walking free, and claimed there were truths that could shake the foundations of the case. And in a world increasingly addicted to true crime coverage, where podcasts dissect every courtroom exchange, and TikTok sleuths hunt for hidden meanings, Daybell's words landed like gasoline on fire.
In September 2025, Netflix had just released a multi-part documentary series, Graves of Deception, the Daybell Cult Murders, reigniting public fascination with the case. Clips of the documentary trended on TikTok, true crime forums buzzed with theories, and even mainstream outlets revisited the trial. It was in this climate that Daybell's death row letters began circulating. Suddenly, the man already sentenced to die had a platform again, and people were listening. Some saw his writings as nothing more than manipulative ramblings. Others, disturbingly, began to sympathize. Online groups popped up, echoing his claims of innocence, framing him as a persecuted prophet. A fringe but vocal minority even called for reopening the investigation. It was almost as though, even behind bars, Chad Daybell had found a way to recruit again. The journalist who received one of the letters, a woman named Rachel Myers, debated whether to publish it. She had covered the case for years and sat through every day of the trial. She had seen the evidence, the photographs, the testimonies, the horrifying discovery in the backyard. She knew the jury's verdict wasn't built on rumors. It was built on undeniable fact. But this letter was different. In it, Chad claimed to reveal information never heard at trial. He named names. He described a meeting. And he suggested that the deaths of JJ and Tylee were part of something bigger, something orchestrated beyond his control. Rachel hesitated. To print the letter would mean giving a convicted murderer a voice again. To ignore it might mean overlooking evidence, however slim, of deeper truths. On a gray September evening, Rachel sat at her desk. The letter spread before her. The ink was shaky, the words desperate, but the final line stopped her cold. If you want the real story, follow the trail of the red notebook. That's where the truth begins. Her pulse quickened. A red notebook? She had never heard mention of it before. Not in police records, not in the courtroom, not in years of reporting. What was Chad Daybell pointing to from death row? And more terrifyingly, who still had it? Stay tuned for part 2, where Rachel Myers follows the first lead into the mystery of the red notebook and uncovers chilling new connections that put her directly in the crosshairs of a dangerous truth. Rachel Myers hadn't expected her hands to tremble. She'd interviewed killers, stood outside crime scenes, and faced grieving families, but the phrase in Chad Daybell's death row letter, "Follow the trail of the red notebook," unsettled her in a way she couldn't explain. A notebook wasn't just paper and ink. In true crime, notebooks were confessions, maps, and sometimes, like in the case of Susan Goodwin, solved only months earlier. It was the voice of the dead finally speaking. Could this be the same? If the red notebook existed, what was inside it? Rachel started digging through her old notes on the Daybell trial. She scrolled through hundreds of pages of testimony, court transcripts, and exhibits. No mention of a red notebook. Not in evidence. Not in police reports. Not even in whispers from the attorneys. But one detail jumped out. During Lori Vallow's trial, a witness mentioned that Lori was always journaling. Friends testified that she kept spiral-bound notebooks filled with her revelations about spirits, past lives, and apocalyptic visions. Detectives had seized some of these notebooks, but according to the evidence logs Rachel reviewed, none were read. So, what was Chad referring to? The timing was strange, too. Netflix's documentary Graves of Deception had just dropped, sparking new national attention. Viewers were reanalyzing every statement, every photograph, every second of courtroom footage. Conspiracy threads sprouted overnight. Was Chad deliberately planting a new breadcrumb trail, bait for the public to keep his name alive? Or was this something investigators had genuinely overlooked? Rachel needed answers. Her first stop was Madison County Courthouse. She requested access to archived trial materials. While clerks pulled files, she searched her phone for references online. That's when she stumbled across something buried deep in a Reddit thread. A user claiming to be a former neighbor of Chad and Tammy Daybell posted a chilling anecdote. Tammy once told me Chad kept a red journal locked in his office. He'd write in it late at night. Said it wasn't for anyone else to see, not even her. She thought it was his prophecies. Rachel's pulse spiked. If this was true, Chad's red notebook wasn't Lori's, it was his. But if investigators never seized it, where was it now? Rachel arranged a call with Detective Harrison Clark, one of the original officers on the Daybell case. At first, he brushed her off. "We've been through everything, Rachel. Every scrap of paper, every hard drive. If there was a red notebook, we'd have it." But when she read him Chad's words directly from the letter, the line about the trail of the red notebook. Clark fell silent. Finally, he said, "If that's real, then someone's hiding something. And if it's out there, God help whoever finds it first." By now, news of Chad's letters had leaked online. Rachel wasn't the only one chasing the red notebook. TikTok sleuths were posting videos with millions of views, speculating about what it might contain. Was it a confession? A hit list? A coded prophecy predicting future deaths? Even mainstream media picked it up. CNN ran a segment. Daybell death row letters spark hunt for missing evidence. Rachel realized she was racing not only against time, but against the internet's obsession. And then, just as the frenzy reached a peak, she got a call. The caller identified herself only as Anna. Her voice was nervous, shaky. She said she had once attended Chad Daybell's lectures, back before the murders, when he was still selling books and spinning prophecies. "I know where it is," Anna whispered. "I saw him hide it." Rachel's heart pounded. She pressed for details, but Anna refused to explain over the phone. "Meet me in Rexburg. Tomorrow night. Bring no one." The line went dead. Rachel sat frozen, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. If Anna was telling the truth, she might be the only person alive who knew where Chad Daybell's red notebook was hidden. But there was one more problem. When Rachel looked at the caller ID, the number traced back to a prepaid burner phone. And just hours later, she noticed a car idling outside her apartment, its headlights off, watching. Who else was following the trail of the red notebook? Stay tuned for part 3, where Rachel risks everything to meet the mysterious informant, uncovering dark secrets about Chad's prophecies and realizing she may have stepped straight into a trap.